Transportation is everything, man. And that's not just being cocky as like an 88 November, but it really is.
No, yeah, for
Even on the
sure.
civilian side, logistically, you can't exist in a wide area without moving things from point A to point B, right? Right. So did you went to AIT with me too, right?
Yeah, yeah, we
I
were in
remember
AIT.
you being one of the few that came from basic, got on the same bus with me
So
and everything.
yeah, and that's one of the things that not only just to catch up a little bit because it's been so long since we spoke, but one of the things I found so interesting about because most of the people that I've interviewed is people that I know, and I've branched out a little bit to people that I don't, which has been awesome.
Yeah.
But just the unique experience because I was a reservist and we were both Novembers, and for
Yeah.
whatever reason you had like these two or three because there was one more. Was it San Juan? I think was with us as
San
well.
Juan was my dude. Yeah, he's my other battle buddy.
He was another
I have him to
transportation
thank for my
guy.
wife a little bit too. I'll get
Well,
into that if you want to, but
because he went to AIT, we went to basic AIT. Well, all three of us. So you had like these three transportation people who went to basic in Fort Knox, which was mostly like infantry people.
yeah, I was the infantry guy.
And then I was a reservist. You were active duty, and here we are like doing basic and stuff together. So it's like we were in the same place, but we still had very different experiences just from how our army careers were set up to go in the future. So that's one
Yeah.
thing that I found really interesting. But yeah, we all went to basic AIT together and stuff. And another thing that I am particularly interested too is hearing about how November works as an active duty person after the fact. Because I'm not going to lie, if you go back and like I'll share you the channel and stuff if you want to check out some of the other episodes I've done. We talk shit about active duty November guys and stuff a lot because
Yeah.
so like when I was deployed, it was an
Yeah.
active duty unit, right? And so like the brass and the sergeant majors and stuff were all active duty guys, but everyone who was like E7 and below was all reservists that filled in. And we were the ones that were like conducting the mission, and then the active duty guys were all like admins and stuff. And they all fucking sucked. And we none of us liked them at all. Like we maybe got along with a couple of them, you know? And so it's not that I'm trying to say like all active duty Novembers suck, obviously, but like in my experience, like yeah, we were like, what do you guys do? Like you don't do anything. We do everything, you know. So I
I
mean,
think that's interesting because I'll jump ahead a little bit. So we'll skip over the AIT piece, but we go to so yeah, I was active duty. In my first duty station, I was lucky. I'll say that. Um, there are other duty stations where 88 Novembers aren't used properly. They're not used in the position doing conducting the mission that they would conduct. They're just kind of sitting in the rear and just staying on, just staying knowledgeable and capable. And then when you deploy, then they engage. Like that's when you're gonna do your legitimate 88 November mission, right? But I went to Fort Irwin. My first duty station was Fort Irwin. And Fort Irwin's a training site, right? Like that's a
yeah,
huge base. And I went to an MCT there, a movement control team there that brought soldiers in for training and brought soldiers out for training. Like as they come in and they come out, right? So I worked railhead, I worked flight lines, I worked convoys. I actually did the 88 November stuff, like planned it, coordinated it, supervised it, all that stuff. Um, and when reserve units would come to train on our active duty base, they were lost. Those guys needed to have their hands held. And it was frustrating for us active duty guys to go, like, this is all you do in life. That's what we're thinking. This is all we did. So we
yeah.
know our shit like this, like the back of your hand. You know what I mean? This is my job. This is how you properly chain this. This is how you do that. And these guys would come just standing around, and you're like, bro, how do you not know how to do your job? You know what I mean? And we were doing everything for them. That's what it felt like. It's like,
Yeah.
we got to do everything for these guys. They don't even, like, I'm surprised he knows how to drive or start that Humvee. Like, you got to be kidding me. Time soldiers,
Yeah.
nonsense. So I had a very opposite experience.
Yeah. Well, it's so
Yeah.
funny because it can be so unit dependent. Because like the unit that I was in, it was down here in Florida. I was in the 195th, I don't remember. They changed it to 195th ETO. What was it before? I don't remember what it was for. But like we had the leadership and the group of people we had. We were like, we want to do the stuff. We want to know what we're doing. Most of us were like that. So like when we would go on AT and we would go to try to train, a lot of times we'd show up and they were just like, "Oh, you guys just go hang out in the office. Like we'll work and you can just say you were here." And we're like, "No, like we want to learn. What am I going to do if I got to go overseas and I don't know what I'm doing?" So like we would actively fight people who didn't want to have us do anything to show us like we don't get to train on it all the time. Our unit did the best they could. Like we had a few vehicles and they would have us do some stuff. We'd run mock convoys and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
we didn't have all the equipment available to us all the time and stuff. So like we would try to take advantage of that when we got somewhere. So it's funny, like you say, you come in, there's all these people who have no idea what they were doing. It's like I've experienced that, but at least in my unit, it's like we want to, please
Well,
help us.
yeah, and so I did 4 years active duty. I did Fort Irwin, and then I went to Korea. I brought my family, so I had to do 2 years there. Um, and then we had some family situations come up. And I stepped out and I went into the reserves, and I got such a freaking shock of how much they didn't do on the reserves, or how much, how many units were just not training like active train, or didn't quite have that discipline level that I thought, what I mean, that active duty does have. Like your whole life every day is Army
Yeah,
on active duty. You wake up 04 PT. Like it's basic training, but you go home at night instead of instead of going to a barracks. And not every morning is this intense race to the finish. You know what I mean?
yeah,
A little bit slower pace, but same concept. You know what I mean? You eat at a certain time, you're up at a certain time, you work out at a certain time, you're doing your job at a certain time, you're released at a certain time, that kind of thing. Everything's synced. And then on the reserve side, it was very, yeah, there might be a formation at 1300, maybe. You know what I mean? I was like, what do you
yeah,
mean maybe? Are we there or not? Like we need to be there 15 minutes ahead or 30 minutes ahead. I
yeah,
need to know, is this actually happening or not? And then people were a lot more casual. It was a little bit more civilianized in interactions between ranks and stuff like that.
yeah,
On the active duty side, rank was absolutely defines how I address you. You know what I mean? There's very few NCOs that were laid back and be like, dude, yeah, I'm an E6 or I'm a senior, but like relax, just talk to me like human beings. You had
yeah,
to pay attention to that. There was few that could, there was few that go to parade rest. So discipline was different. It was very much a shock for me. But I didn't do it for very long. I put in for so I've been across in my little 15-year career, I've done active duty, I've done reserves, I've done AGR, and now I'm actively on ADOS. So I've like served in almost every little weird component capacity that you could in the Army,
yeah,
which is kind of cool. And I've seen how different everything is across the board.
yeah,
I will say that I have a brand new respect for reservists. Um, Having been one and seeing what's going on, I understand their struggles trying to stay. They have two sides, right? Like they have a whole civilian job and civilian life and professions that they're working on. They're trying to get promoted. They're trying to move up, right? And then they have this military side where they get like 2 weekends the month, you know what I mean? And then maybe 2 weeks at AT to really try to be a professional soldier, you know what I mean? Like understand that and get into that. And they always have that struggle to deal with, staying relevant with both. A lot of guys lose money coming to drill.
yeah, yeah,
That like they make more on the civilian side that if they would just go to work those 2 days on that weekend, they would make double, triple what they're making as a E5 or E whatever. Um, but that was a big thing that hit me. And I was like, man, these guys are losing money to come here. They really do. Like, what are we doing here? There's
yeah,
some benefits in the military, like, college money, TA, there's other things that help, maybe healthcare or whatever else. And maybe that's why they're doing it too. But some of these guys really don't need the army. Like if they thought about it, they really didn't need it. Maybe it's a personal growth challenge thing, which is great. Um, and then on top of that, so you're in 88 November as a reservist, right? And then you had your civilian job. You brought all that talent into the army as well. Like you have credentials and expertise and an education maybe in civilian law And then you come on the weekend and you're an 88 Mike. You know what I mean? You drive trucks, but you're
Yeah.
also a lawyer. So talking to some of these guys, it blows my mind on all that talent they're bringing in to the Army. Like that's
Yeah.
free training, free knowledge, free experience, free. That's a bonus for the Army, and they're expected to try to keep up with active duty on such a small table. That's one of my biggest challenges as an AGR. And AGR I was full time, but I was trying to help the unit stay current, stay valid in training,
Yeah.
meet all the marks they have to meet. Because Big Army's saying we got to do these things, but I'm trying to do it with this much time. And
Yeah.
whereas active duty's got like all the time, like we don't care. We'll stay late. We'll get it done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We'll get
Well,
that training done.
even something as small as like doing your online courses and on active duty, it's like, oh, there's a computer center right there, or our
Uh,
compound has computers right here. Whereas a reservist, it's like, okay, we have this weekend to book the computer room that every other unit is trying to book because for whatever reason, we all drill on the same weekend every month.
yeah, we
And
sync up.
yeah. And then it's like, oh, you need to go home and do this. Well, half the people's computers don't work with it. Half the people's computers, the cat card readers won't work with their systems. Or like at the time, at least, AKO didn't work for shit on Google Chrome. And so like people were having to go back and try to use Internet Explorer, which sucked. And so it's like, yeah, there
And
are
then
all
some
these
of
extra layers.
the links and the sites you need to go to, if you don't log in every 30 days, it locks you out. Like, yeah, that struggle's always been a struggle. It's still a struggle.
Yeah.
It's still a struggle. They don't have laptops, but I will say this: they've gotten a lot further in making that easier for reservists. So here's one of the things. I just happen to have one. This mobile CAC reader,
Okay.
which is pretty cool. So now you can essentially just order a pack of these things. They're freaking super tiny. They fold up like that, and they just sit on your keychain. Like
Oh,
that's how tiny
nice.
they are. And you can take it. You can issue it out to all your soldiers. So now they have a way to get on their own personal computers, right? And have a CAC card reader that's not massive or a bunch of cords and crap you got to drag around. And then two, we have a way to link mobile to a mobile. I don't know how much can I even get into that. I don't know how much I can tell you about what we're capable of. So you got to go through PAO and all that other good stuff to make sure. But
Don't get yourself in trouble
they
or
have made
anything
it
on my account.
easier for soldiers to use their civilian equipment without actively connecting to, secure devices or whatever, but still be able to execute certain things like your trainings and upload your certificates and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, the IPSA thing is new, and that's really huge. They put a lot of like if you need to upload stuff into your profile, for promotion, this, that, the other, like you can do a lot of that stuff. There's mobile links and stuff on your phone now that you can just sync up your phone to these apps, and the soldier can initiate things. Oh, I didn't get paid right. You can put in your own pay inquiry. You know what I mean? Where it
Okay.
used to be you
Yeah.
had to go to like an S1 and hope they knew what needed to be done to
Yeah.
even ask
Yeah.
about it. You know what I mean? Like you were at the mercy of the different sections that had that you were at the mercy of all the other MOSs because it
Yeah.
wasn't yours. So yeah, we've done a lot for that, to be
Now,
honest. It's pretty cool.
did a lot of that come after COVID, or was that stuff? Because I know they were trying to work on some things when I was still in before COVID. But yeah, I was just curious. Like, did a lot of that advance a lot during the COVID time?
It feels like it did. Everybody was sort of stuck at working from alternate locations, right, and home and whatever else. So the Zoom meeting things and just how we operate, how we link up and connect and share stuff definitely changed then. I do think a lot of that was already in development. You know what I mean? And the Army's always looking to try to come out with the new stuff. The problem is the reserves always end up with the trash of the active duty, like what's left over.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and you can see that with like comm systems and vehicles and all that other good stuff. We're like a gen behind, right? We're still rocking ACUs while active duty's got OCP, and that's just a pattern change. Like it's still a
Yeah.
uniform. It's still the same thing. Like what's going on? Uh, those things were already in develop, like IPSA and all that other good stuff. They were working on it. They were just flushing out the bugs on how to make it work under the protections that need to exist. You know what I mean? The
Yeah.
barriers, you need to have a cat card reader, you need to have this, you need to have that. You can't allow hyperlinks could corrupt the system. Like just making sure that it's safe, right? And it's
Yeah.
not putting out information or it can't be putting that hack protection on it
Yeah.
and still making it work. So I think they were working on it, and it just became maybe a priority or expedited
Yeah, 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 yeah.
because now we need it. Like
Well, that's
so,
one thing that I've thought about having to explain to my children because eventually they're going to teach about COVID in schools and stuff. And I have a lot of people are like, "Oh, COVID changed everything." Like, COVID didn't change anything when you actually look at the history. It accelerated a lot of things because I
yeah,
mean,
force certain things to happen.
well, like you look at even just like supply chain issues, and any report is saying like a lot of that stuff was already starting to happen before COVID, or a lot of people that in that industry are like, hey, we're gonna start seeing supply chain issues because of staffing and money and equipment and all this. And then COVID hits, and it's like, okay, instead of it happening 5 years from now, it's happening right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I could totally see where like the army was looking into that stuff, and then here comes COVID, and they're like, "Oh man, we thought we had more time. We got to get this shit out tomorrow."
Yeah, COVID was a unique time in that I think you need time for transportation. Like that's where it got very, very serious. It hit me immediately that how dependent are we on we're transportation is everything, man. And that's not just being cocky as like an 88 November, but it really is.
No, yeah, for
Even on the
sure.
civilian side, logistically, you can't exist in a wide area without moving things from point A to point B, right? Right? You like the chips. So the chips are made over here, right? And if they can't ship the chips across the sea, then you don't get them here to finish your product. Like the where things are built, I don't think is any one given location anymore because transportation is extremely effective. Logistics is powerful
Yeah,
across the globe, right? So a part of it's built here and a part of it's built there and a part of it's built here and a part of it's built there and all that comes together and then it finally goes to the end base end product cell location or whatever it is. COVID challenged that. It absolutely challenged that when you didn't have the fleet and the movers and the pushers and planes and all this stuff going on, like everything got held up, prices shot through the roof. We had that chip shortage. The value of your crappy car that was 20 years old, it just jumped up through the roof, right? Because it had the chip that we can no longer make or can't ship right now or whatever. And it hit me hard. I was like, dang, man. I've wondered for at least the last 5 years of my career, why am I still in the army as a logistician or in transportation? Because on the civilian side, if you're a transportation manager, logistics manager, coordinator, like you can plan that stuff and do that stuff. You have that experience. These guys are making so much more money than I even like. I look at it and I'm sitting here at little old easy six, and I don't have control. You have some control of your promotion, how fast you move up, right? But some of it is, honestly, is there positions. There's only so many
yeah,
positions to fill or that the Army needs at the next rank. You kind of get held up with that. You know what I mean? If somebody malingers or sticks around too long, you're stuck behind, so many E7s, E8s or whatever that just aren't retiring or waiting forever to retire. You can't promote that. On the civilian side, you're just, as if you have the expertise, you have the talent, you're going to move a lot further,
yeah.
a lot faster. And you can always side jump, right? You can leave this company, move to another company. You could do better as a transportation as a logistician on the civilian side, hands down. The Army is not competing. So it
Yeah.
has to bring it. I've wondered, I don't know. Maybe I'm a
Well,
sucker for pain.
well, that's
I
one
love
of
the
those
Army
where
that way, but
it's also really dependent if you can get a job because I tried real hard to get a job and I couldn't get anything anywhere, and I was considered like very good at what I did in the army. So I mean, it is very
so one of the
competitive as
struggles
well. Like,
translating, I would say, is the translation. It's how they don't teach you in the Army how to, or they didn't used to, how to write what you know on a resume that makes sense to a civilian. So we've been saying a bunch of things like basic.
yeah,
Basic, you and I understand is a language. The Army is a language. It has its own culture, right? We build ourselves around, a belief system, loyalty, duty, respect, all these things. We have our own culture. And then you go to the civilian market with that culture and you say things like AIT and they look at you crazy. We say acronyms like they're just another word, you
yeah.
know, and we do that all the time. So we got to teach soldiers how to translate that. It was
Oh
hard
yeah.
for you and other people, regardless of how talented or capable you are. It is just hard for you to explain that to somebody on the civilian side. Like I logistically supported 130 something people across, 3 months in a training environment and austere losing routes and planes crashing and simulated nonsense. I was capable of doing this. That'll never happen on the civilian side until COVID. But
Yeah, yeah.
but you're capable of fixing those problems, targeting those issues and making that happen. But how do you tell that to the civilian market? How do they
Yeah.
equate that? It didn't line up. So you could write a beautiful all these things in your resume, hand it over to this guy, and this guy go, "Oh, what does that mean? What does that
Yeah.
mean? What certifications do you really have, you know?"
No, it's a really good that's a really good point, especially when you have recruiters that make you all these promises like, "Oh yeah, you go in the army and, you code for a couple of years, then you get out and you go work for some big tech company," when like the vast majority that's not the truth. Some sure, absolutely. But just being realistic about it, it's because you have people that make that same argument, like, "Oh, you could make so much more money if you just work civilian side." Like,
Mhm.
yeah, but it's also not just as simple as you're saying to just go and walk on at Google. So
Yeah.
it's the army could definitely do more to keep up with the promises they make of like, yeah, we'll train you how to do something and then actually train you how to translate that to the civilian world.
Yeah, for sure. There's one new thing they started doing. So you remember that I don't know if you used any of it, but you get tuition assistance towards college, right, while you're
Yeah.
serving on the reserve or the active duty side. Doesn't matter. Um, so now they opened up a new and this is probably 2 years old, 3 years old. It's not that old. They opened up where you could use your tuition assistance to get civilian certificates. And then
Okay.
they've also opened up a little bit where they're working better with colleges with your GI bills and stuff like that to colleges have gotten better at translating your Army experience into the civilian world for what education you have. What does that equate to on the civilian education pain, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can get these credentials for one, and they're free. So let's say the Army says you can fly a plane. Does that mean the same thing on the civilian market? You don't necessarily know, but you can go get the credentials to kind of match that, right? Or nursing, or maybe another MOS is probably a better example. Even so 88 mics, right? You can drive trucks in the military that weigh ridiculous, that have ridiculous weights to them and da 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 da. And then you go to civilian side and they're like, "Oh yeah, do you have your CBL?" You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're helping you get some of that stuff translated over. Um, which is awesome.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
that's good to hear that they're doing
it's getting
that
better.
more.
It's getting
Yeah.
better. The struggle was real though, especially when we came in.
Yeah, I remember when I was trying to go to college and what's it called where the program where you can take like schools you went to in the army and then they'll submit them to the college. Oh my goodness. It's a transcript you can get from the army to take to a college to try to do that. But
Oh, your ATAR transcript.
is that what it's called?
Yeah, you print out your ATAR transcript. Um, and that's what I'm talking about. That's exactly it. Yeah. So all the classes that you've done in the Army, you do a ridiculous amount of classes for
Yeah.
for any number of things, right? Yeah, you print that out. And I'm going to a school on Sunday already, an Army school. So I'm going to TCAIMS too,
Okay.
uh, Sunday. And that's funny because we took that in AIT, right?
Yeah.
What there's like a 40-hour course and then there's a
Yeah.
20-hour
Yeah.
course. And as like what one is different from the other, but this is also my profession. I've been doing it for 15 years. Why do I need to go? Why
Well,
do I need to go to a 40-hour course? I don't know.
that's another thing
Um,
they don't tell you when you're in AIT. They're like, yeah, we'll show you how to use TC Aims. And then you get to a unit and they're like, you're not allowed to use TC Aims. Like, wait, what? They're like, oh, yeah, you have to go to the actual course to get your TC Aims credentials to be actually allowed to do the thing that we said we were training you to do.
yeah, yeah, that's tough. Nothing that I felt like a lot of the things you learned in AIT. So, for anybody else, I guess listening, we probably should say what AIT is. AIT is like you're training you for the job that you're specifically assigned to, your MOS. And you're supposed to learn all those specific skill sets to be ready for that job. Basic training is just like teaching you to be a soldier. AIT is teaching you to do your job as a soldier, like your profession. Um, AIT in real world army is never the same. I don't think I've met a soldier yet today to say they came out of AIT and was like, yeah, ready to go right to whatever it is they're gonna
Yeah.
do. It's more OJT, on the job training, right? Um, that kind of happens in the civilian world too,
Oh
if you
yeah,
think
for
about it,
sure. No,
to
I
some
mean
extent.
you could think there are whole college degrees. I mean, you look at even law degrees, like so much of your law degree is like history of law. And once you get on like with a law firm, like they obviously they do like um mock trials and stuff in school, but you learn so much more of what it is to actually practice as a lawyer once you're working as one. And the degree is like the foundation. So if you think about it that way, like AIT is just kind of like, hey, this is what we do, and this is how you do some of it. That way, when you go to the actual school, you at least have some clue of what your sergeant's talking about when they start talking to you. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah, giving you the base knowledge, teaching you the language of your profession, right? Like we got the language of the Army, then the language of your profession. Yeah, definitely it pushes, it gets you just the foundations. Because when even on active duty, you said you had the frustration when you went in the reserve side that you didn't use TCMs or do any of your, you know, do any of your MOS. Um, a lot of that stuff doesn't just work one weekend, right? Like those systems fall off of secured networks and stuff like that if they're not logged into or used. Anything you don't use breaks, Army or civilian. On the Army side, on the active duty side, active component, I went into an MCT, which I was lucky. Like I said, I was saying I was lucky that I went to a whole. We were all 88s. So most of us had done our whole life. So I had all these senior enlisted soldiers to kind of learn from, like what the real world 88 does. And then two, we weren't doing the computer sitting behind the desk thing. We were in the field. I was at the lower level. I wasn't senior enlisted, so I was doing the in the field, grinding 12 hours a day in the sun part of our job. You know what I mean? It was very, very different. Um, but I got to 88. You know what I mean? There's some 88s that they have a position with a unit that's maybe I don't know, the unit isn't in transportation or movement, so they're not 88 mics or anything like that. They're in something else. They do something else. Where have I seen 88s assigned to? So there'll be assigned to I don't know, an ordnance company, right?
yeah.
And those guys are ammo experts. And that 88 is supposed to be the subject matter expert on assisting them on how to move ammo and plan those loads and do all that, right? He don't know nothing. He's never 88. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those ordnance guys know more about it just having been done it, like having executed and been in their MOS for so long that they've had to learn what's required to move ammunition safely on civilian roads. And like they have to do that. They have to do it without the professional assigned to them. But that 88 will get there and they push them to the shut up, sit back. You're not doing the request. You're not doing the planning. Like we got it. And they don't teach them nothing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so here he comes 3, 4 years later, and he comes to me, and I was lucky enough to 88 my whole career. And I start talking to him about things and teaching him things. Here's how you plan this. Here's how you execute that. Here's you go off this packs count. You want to do load plans. You want to do this. You want to do that. And they're completely lost. And they should know by this point, once they're E5s, E6, whatever, been in the army for 5, 6 years, they're behind. They should already know this stuff, and they're lost. They look like deer in the headlight. And you're like, some of us get lucky and some of us don't necessarily have maybe the path laid out in front of us right away, and we got to maybe chase it a little bit more. I don't
Yeah.
know.
You saying that really makes me wonder, thinking back to some of like the crappy leadership that I had, if I've judged them unfairly, because if that was more of their experience where they didn't know what they were doing. Because I mean, I've seen plenty of, people they get promoted just based on points, but they've never done anything. They don't know
Or the
anything.
requirement, like we were talking about earlier, you can get stuck behind a top-loaded MOS. Like there's only so many spots they can put you in at that rank moving up. But then there's also MOSs where they can't fill these top slots. Like for whatever reason, that trend up there is that everybody's retiring or getting out or giving up or got something else going on, right? So they get out of the way quickly, which means everybody underneath is out of necessity. They're
Moving up.
literally getting
Yeah.
pinned the next rank and moving up. Yeah. So they may not have the experience. They were in a streamlined MOS. This hit me really hard this year. I'm an E6 and I have 15 years total active service. If you put it all together, it's about 15 years. There are MOSs that had master sergeants who have only been in the army for like 10 years.
Wow.
or less. So I have more experience in the Army, more time serving than some master sergeants or CSMs or, you know what I mean? Like these are
Yeah.
as high as you can get on the enlisted side, right? This is it. You've reached the top, and now you're just moving around in responsibilities. Once you hit eight, you're becoming a first sergeant. Then maybe you come back. Then you go CSM. Then you come back, and So, and then I met another one that was been in 16 years, and she just got pinned master sergeant, and on the reserve side. And it's just a matter of a little bit of the MOS luck. Was there room up top? Were you the top? Like I've been in the top OML list. That's a order of merit list. So I've been in the top of the OML list for most of my E6 time. I've been in pretty competitive. I have college degrees. I've done all the things that I can do as far as contributing to that rank. It's just, it's not, we're officially at a point. I'm officially at a point in my career where one problem is um, at E7, all the 88 series merge. So if you're an 88 Lima, 88 Mike, 88 Tank, like all of the 88s are competing for 7 slots.
Yeah.
So it's already bottlenecked. Like now we're all trying to get through this straw. And there's been, at least for the last 5 years, I've seen the list come out, the promotion list, and there's not an 88 November on it. So
Wow.
that means
Really?
that literally none of those 7 slots have opened up, the E7 slots. There's not one position where somebody left it so that 188 Zulu Mike November, whatever, could step into it. You know what I mean? Not one. And that's 8 or 9 different MOSs competing for
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
spot, not just Novembers.
Well, I and
So,
I think a big part of that, and this is something I've argued for years, is the Army has done a very poor job of because at that point when you're talking E7, E8 and stuff, you fall much more into a quote leadership or administrative role. So you do the transportation job less, and you do the sergeant job more.
yeah.
And I I think that they need to bring back specialist ranks where you can have those people who are very skilled in doing the job but don't want to be responsible of people, and they have an avenue to continue to get promoted and become more so.
But not
And
required to lead. Yeah, I got you. Not like so at E6, generally you're gonna have 3, 4 soldiers underneath you that you also got to take care of or
yeah,
whatever. Yeah, and then you got to move up. Almost all NCOs have to serve as a first sergeant. Like there's a bunch of positions that you feel like you're gonna end up having to do, and it becomes way
yeah,
more taking care of the soldier and the person than maybe MOS driven. I think that's fair. You should allow people to definitely promote just keep that, maintain that knowledge and just stay in that profession and not be the first sergeant, not be
yeah,
the
yeah.
whatever.
Well, and then they'll
And
argue that the warrant officer ranks exist, but the warrant officer jobs are so limited. Like you talk about not having slots. There's so many less warrant officer slots than everything else. And now you're talking about all these additional requirements because you have to have certain ASVAB scores and they want you to have the degrees. And so like you're making this competition, it's not that competition's bad, but it's just like the pool is so large for such a small amount of positions. When you have, I know plenty of
yeah,
dudes.
because the warrant officer is, when you look at them, they're like a field officer is the way I view them, right? There's a lot of responsibility as a warrant officer. It kind of answered what we were talking about, where they are just the subject matter expert. They don't really get soldiers put underneath them. They're not enlisted and not considered first sergeants, whatever. But you're the man. Like you know all of your branch. Like
Yeah,
that's like an MOS specific trained individual for all of transportation. Then you have a
yeah,
warrant for all of medical. You know what I mean? You can't just know one. You can't just be an 88 November. You got to be 88 Mike. You got to be 88 this. You got
yeah,
to be
yeah,
88 that. You got to be. So you do want those people to, I want them to compete. I want them to compete because that warrant officer looks that LT, that commander, that whatever in the eye, who's also in that branch and goes, sir, that's not doctrine. That's not the right way.
yeah,
And he
yeah,
has the chest to hold that. You know what I mean? Enlisted can say it all day long, but at the end of the day, we execute. That officer plans that. He tells us what we do, and we do it. Good, bad, or indifferent, we execute, right? The warrant is that you know exactly what right looks like. You know what I mean? You're
Yeah.
the talent, you're the knowledge base, and you also have a little bit of the rank supporting you to push back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even if it's
I totally agree with you there. I just think that the scope of people is a little too limited in that they could have like a specialist eight who's in charge of the transportation shop, who like he's not responsible for he, she, whoever. They're not responsible for taking care of the soldiers, but they're responsible for running like that TC aim cell. And they don't necessarily have to be a sergeant major or something because you don't really need a sergeant major. You could have those subject matter experts in the smaller scopes. And
well, that's
maybe
where they
like,
would bring. See, that's what I'm saying is I'm saying they will take a mobility warrant, which I'm working on, by the way. Uh, I'll be there soon. That's part of the reason I'm going to this class. That is the reason I'm going to this class. Uh, I need that in my qual to submit for my warrant officer packet. But you can put that warrant in that shop, and that's what that warrant does. He's the officer. And it doesn't matter if the first sergeant comes in there and tries to say this, say that, right? Really, the first sergeant it does not outrank the warrant officer.
yeah,
You see what I mean?
like I
And
said,
yeah,
I
he's
think it's
responsible for
just,
the soldiers and all that other good stuff, but that warrant is that expert executing right there in that shop. You know, he can do that.
yeah. But see, that's what I'm saying though, is that the like with the warrants, a lot of times they obviously should be very good at what they do. But like our warrant officers in every unit I was in, it would be like one warrant is the umbrella across like multiple battalions. And they would be responsible for answering the question. And they have so many people to go. Like that person could have a couple people under them that are the person at unit level who's there all the time. And you could say that their scope is a little bit more limited in the specialty that they have, opening up another avenue for soldiers to be able to get promoted, to be very good at what they do, but not be responsible for people, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
I think it could go, yeah. Yeah, I get what you mean. I've always been a little bit frustrated with how is it possible that so on the enlisted side, getting promoted, right? They want you to have a degree, they want you to do this, they want you to do all that, right? So you go do all that, but really at some point, you're basically telling an enlisted soldier that he has to have all the qualifications that an officer has to have
Yeah.
to be to receive a commission,
Yeah.
but also you're not paying him or you know what I mean? Like the pay difference and everything is just it's ridiculous. So I
Yeah.
have to do everything that that captain has to do, but you're going to pay him more. He knows less and he's in charge of everything.
Yeah.
You understand
See,
how like you have less
yeah.
experience, you have less everything, but I have to be just as educated as you and more experienced than you and get less out of all of that, like
Yeah.
not being compensated for it. So it didn't make sense for me.
And see, that
I'm
kind of
frustrated
plays
where I'm at.
into,
I'm stuck at a six and I'm dealing with that. I have a degree.
yeah.
There's nothing separating me from this lieutenant, brand new lieutenant, who in the real world, if you set him side by side with enlisted, he's nothing more than a E2, E3
Yeah.
with
Private of the
a
officer
college
world.
degree in sociology or something that doesn't apply to
Yeah.
his branch at all. It doesn't matter. But he just got he's got a bachelor's degree. Okay, whoop-de-doo.
Yeah.
That staff sergeant over there has got 15 years in the Army. He's got a bachelor's degree in well, I don't know, management, which is at least a skill set you apply to leading soldiers and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And he's getting more money and in charge than this talented experience, 15 years experience in the Army. He's got all that. It's the same as you. Like, what's the difference?
Yeah.
That's blown my mind. I'm like, well, then maybe I need to do something about it. Instead of complaining about it, quit sitting being enlisted. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
time to step away from that and do a green to gold or do something like that.
Oh, and I
I
think
think
that,
you should have to. So to get back to what where that started, I feel like the majority of officers should have to be enlisted at some point. I've
yeah.
always liked that idea that you promoted up to sergeant or at least a staff sergeant, like where I'm at right now. So you've got 5, 6 years in the Army. You could be doing your degree during that time. I don't care, whatever it is. Like you want them to have a degree, that's fine. But you have to serve as enlisted up to a certain point, and then you separate. Then you decide, I'm going to go the officer route. I'm going to go the warrant route. I'm going to stay the enlisted route. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you could still be hands-on with the soldier. Are you more driven? By then you got a little bit more experience. You know how the Army works. You know where you're passionate about, what parts of the Army you like. You know what I mean? Do you want to be in leadership, write op orders, plan things that way, do the officer thing? Do you want to be a little bit more focused on training, how, how we're preparing soldiers and go stay enlisted? You know what I mean? And if you want to be this elite expert, whatever, sort of in the middle, you want to be that specialized. You love what you do, your MOS so much that you really want to be primarily focused on that. Shoot straight up warrant.
Yeah.
But everybody starts with the struggle in basic. You know what I mean? The basic
Yeah.
training struggle. Officers don't do that either. So
No, I agree with you in a lot of respects because most of the officers that I think back that were the ones that we worked best with were ones that were enlisted first. That's not always the case. I mean, I had some good officers, like my team captain when we were overseas, my OIC. He was direct commission. He was awesome, but like it just seems so much more rare to find that. And I agree that if they were made to have that shared experience, that baseline to then that path to officership, I think I think it would solve a lot of the problems that the Army has with that disconnect between those different specific scopes of the different officers versus NCOs versus warrants and stuff. And then I think your point about you having to have all the same credentials as an officer to get promoted, but then the pay is so different and the
and
scope
the
is so different.
responsibility, like
The
this guy's
responsibility
supposed
is
to
so
lead
different.
me, and I've
Yeah.
got far more experience
And I
and I
think
still
that
have the degree you have. Like, so what's the difference?
I think
Like what?
that is kind of a big thing that supports my argument of the Army needs another pathway for people to get promotions versus just being pigeonholed into those three options that they have. Like I feel like if they have that fourth option, that you could still have good people get promoted, be technically proficient and skilled, but not force someone to be a sergeant when they don't want to lead people, not force someone to be an officer when they don't want to push paperwork. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you mature as you, just like anybody does, as you're coming in. A lot of these guys come in, what, 18? We said that earlier, right? You come straight out of like high school. You don't know nothing about yourself. Then you're still figuring things out. You're probably going to be another 3, 4 years before you figure out who you are. You know what I mean? You're still working on that. And do you like this Army thing? Is it serious? Is it not? What parts of the Army that you like? What parts of
Yeah.
the Army you don't like? Um, and somewhere in that 4 year mark, yeah, I think we all should just. I like the idea. I don't know that it's the right answer. I just like the idea of everybody having that shared struggle. It brings you close together, bonds you.
Well, you could say that about being in the military just in general.
I want an officer leading me that I know he can run in the rain and suck it up, Buttercup. You know what I mean? Like he can
Yeah.
have a
Yeah.
great attitude in a crappy situation. He could think clear through it, and we could just move on. You know what I mean? He's been a little elite, bare minimum. He's been mentally tested,
Yeah.
stressed, and made good decisions under stress situations.
Yeah.
So
Well, I've spoken to a bunch of people in the same vein as like not that I know if they think that this is the answer, but you look at like Korea, where everyone has to serve in the military, and that seems to bring a lot of the population closer together just in general. And it's that same kind of idea. You have shared experience, you have a baseline, you know that this person has been through something similar. It allows you to connect a little bit easier. So, it's that same kind of idea. You meet other veterans out in the world and you immediately have some, at least tertiary bond of you've been through that same kind of thing. And it kind of allows that relationship. It opens the door to more easily form that relationship between those people.
yeah, yeah, for sure.